We do not want to give up our decision making to AI. It's a very scary thing. What if nuclear machines and warheads are all driven by AI?
We've seen some science fiction where administration of law is done by machines. What do you have to say about it?
Most of the orders require the level of human discretion which AI can never ever replicate. You need a judge who understands the party.
Welcome back, viewers, to Be Cubed, Breaking Boundaries with none other than Sabeer Bhatia. This episode is going to deal with technology in the legal field, and we have specially invited a bright young legal spark, Raghav Kakkar, for the show. Raghav Kakkar, welcome. Thank you. Raghav is practicing civil and commercial litigation in High Court and Supreme Court. He brings with him expertise on white-collar crimes. None better than him, given the age that he represents, to talk about the impact of technology in the legal field. And the first question I would like to ask you is to do with something extremely topical: AI, artificial intelligence. How is AI impacting the legal field?
So actually, prior to the AI boom coming into India, we've actually had technology changing lawyers' lives for 20 years. So prior to the 2000s, lawyers used to do their research through books. So you had like 1,000 books where you had to find one judgment. It would take about 10 days. But then the algorithms came along, and now all you need to do is a case search. You type the keywords, and what used to take 10 days now takes an hour. But that is prior to AI. But at least the general consensus among lawyers has been that this has changed the field. But now, from a positive, at least that's been my reading of the people, that from a positive impact, now they feel that if it gets too advanced and you don't need someone to type in words at all, then you have 75% of the market being wiped off, the job market, which is very scary. It doesn't affect people like me, who mostly argue, but people who do research or draft contracts are only very scary. Having said that, I feel it's also going to unlock a lot of access, which you don't have, because the income inequality in India. And a lot of people don't afford lawyers, and therefore people who can afford lawyers get better representation and their success rate goes up. But with AI coming in, I think it'll level the playing field. And I'm really looking forward to that. Although having said that, there's not a single app that exists as of today that actually has integrated AI into research. So it's a very nascent field.
There are these numerous munshis and assistants and researchers, a whole army of them. What's going to happen to them and their livelihood? Sabeer?
Yeah, no, it's a very scary thing, not just in the field of legal research, but any field of research. And legal particularly, because it affects people's lives directly. So, the beauty of an AI engine is you can just ask it a question. Find me cases that are closest to this case, and you can go on to describing your case over the past 20 years. And it will search all of the internet, all of the publicly available data on the net, and present to you an answer. Now, where this gets interesting and where I don't think we will completely do away with researchers is there is an element in AI called hallucination, which is AI sometimes cooks up stories of its own just because it does not want to not give you an answer. It has to give you an answer. Sometimes this answer is just magically imagined. So it can come up with imaginary cases, imaginary judgments, and that's where everything that AI throws back at you has to have a human gatekeeper, where a human actually reads all of this, goes back and verifies that those are real cases, that those incidents really happened, that those judgments were really passed. And so this double cross verification, I think, will continue for a while. Now, where AI will become more efficient is if it is given a database at the back end or a large language model that is focused only on the legal field. And that's what I think Raghav is talking about. If there were whoever is working on that to create a body of knowledge and to have a large language model address it and exclusively work on that data, that will be extremely useful to lawyers and to anybody researching cases and thinking of arguments via a chat box.
So you mean there's going to be a buffer, a period of time when this method will not be entirely reliable, when there will be a lot of diligence required to figure out whether what AI is telling you is correct or not. Is that right?
I think it will be forever. We do not want to, give up our decision making to AI, and that's the doomsday scenario that people talk about. What if nuclear machines and warheads are all driven by AI, which is fed wrong information, and suddenly somebody launches a preeminent strike and launches a missile even before the human checks and balances. So that's why we cannot completely depend on AI. We can use it as a very efficient assistant, but the ultimate decision making has to be with a human being.
Raghav, we've seen some science fiction where administration of law and is done by machines, and with the assumption that the machine is perfect and it will not miscarry justice. It will always be very just. What do you have to say about that?
So that, at least in our jurisdiction, in India at least, where most of the work, because of the delay in getting justice, most of the orders are either on the first day or the second day, which really matter to a party. For example, in IP. Now those orders are based on a balance of convenience. Now that requires a level of human discretion which AI can never ever replicate. It might have the facts, it might have the law, but you need a judge who understands the party and knows, if I pass an order, which party will be worse affected as to not pass an order. And that I at least feel no matter how mature AI gets, it can never reach there.
When we see the depiction of the legal process or law or jurisprudence, we see we see that law is blindfolded. It goes only by evidence and not by personal discretion. So when you say that the judge needs to understand, does the judge emote? Does the judge apply subjectivity? And if so, then where is this blindfold gone?
So in an ideal world, there should be no subjectivity. But I have at least felt in a country like India with so much disparity anyway, there has to be some subjectivity. There has to be a human touch to it. And the problem is how far do you go? For example, you do criminal law, then you go into sentencing. Now, how do you deal with that? You can't have an AI decide whether someone should go to jail for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. You don't know what kind of family they have, who's dependent on them. So you need, in civil law or criminal law, you need a human sitting there. At least on this aspect.
But this is where I think law differs a little bit in the US, where ultimately it is the truth as opposed to subjective sentencing. And most cases, judges that decide cases, they rely on prior judgments to see what is this case most similar to, and that is why there is so much use of computers, of AI, of databases, of search, because judgments are not left up to individual judges. It's so that's the way they remove the subjectivity, is that it is not based on evidence that is written evidence, but based on a testimony that you gave. And so ultimately they rely on truth winning, and because under penalty of perjury, and that's how they create the body of evidence, by asking people questions. Lawyers are allowed to go and interrogate the opponents, their own clients or whatever, and that's how they get to the truth. So it's not just what evidence is, and so they try to remove the subjectivity out of it.
So that's actually what happens in India as well, up to I think about 95%, because we are also bound by precedent.
I see.
But what happens interestingly is, so a judge can, supposing a judge has 20 cases before him, prior cases. If he's creative and he wants to give a party relief, he can choose which side of the law he wants to write a judgment on, because he can either write A or B based on the body of law. Unless, of course, it's completely settled, then you can't do anything. So I think that top 5%, according to me at least, AI can work up to 95, but I think the top 5%, I think, and even in US actually, I would feel the jury system, for example.
Yeah.
How does an AI substitute for that? You have 10 people, emotions will be involved. And India actually that way is even better because we don't have a jury system. We actually abolished the jury system, which is a very interesting story why we abolished it. I don't know if you know heard of the Nanavati case. So we used to have jury system in India, and then there was a naval officer who caught his wife cheating on him and shot him dead, shot the man dead, and the jury acquitted him because they were obviously saying that she cheated on you, and in the 60s, and that's why we had to abolish the jury system. He's right now in Canada, and he admitted to killing the guy, and the jury system acquitted him because they said your wife cheated on you, you're valid ground to kill him, which is not a legal defense. But that's why in a country with so many emotions, we had to do away with the jury system.
But the jury system, the way it works in the US is every juror is told that you will have no contact with any of the parties, and this is truly what your inner conscience tells you, and recuse yourself if there is some connection somehow or whatever. And so the belief is that 10 people will not do the wrong thing. It's like they will rely on their conscience to do the right thing, because ultimately all of us are driven by something called human conscience, and we are answerable one day to a bigger power than any one of us. And so that's why it kind of works,
Till OJ comes along.
Till OJ comes along. But he had a great lawyer. He had a great lawyer who says, if the glove does not fit, you must acquit. And so he created the element of doubt, in the minds of the jurors, and that was enough, because obviously when you're sentencing a human being to death or to be incarcerated forever, you have to have zero element of doubt.
So eventually, in any process to do with life, people, humans, public life, there is the human factor which seems, Sabeer, the most important one. Now, for example, in law, a lot of assistance can be given by technology. A lot of assistance, research and a whole lot of other things. But when it comes down to administering law, then no one better than the human. Is that right? And then there is something called document review and analysis. Do you have
So
something?
that I think is very scary, because if AI gets mature enough to do that, as you would probably know, then we require zero human intervention, because you have to fill in the key clause of an agreement, and the AI will do it quicker and probably better than a human without any error if they get matured enough. No typos, and you don't even need legal review, and which is very scary, at least I think for big firms, because 70% of the revenue comes from documentation.
In the past couple of months, I have signed 2 documents that were completely generated using AI, because they involve small amounts of transactions, and that were put on DocuSign, and 2 parties agreed, and we just did the deal. Now, one other area of AI where AI can be very useful is in detecting fraud. You see, there's a lot of financial fraud that happens. All of us have bank accounts. All of us transact. When you have large bodies of data, for example, hypothetically speaking, during the time of demonetization and then remonetization, if there were fraud that was conducted, AI could have picked it up like this, because it has access to all the accounts. It would just say that this transaction is erratic. All of a sudden, this person's bank account has gone up by an inordinate amount. There is no way that this person, who's a salaried worker or a bank officer, can get. That is where the power of AI comes in detecting financial fraud, in detecting insider trading. If the stock market somebody gives somebody a piece of information and they go trade on that stock. They have not used to trading, but suddenly, they buy lots of shares of some company. That's where I think AI can really come and make sure that everybody is, operating, without any sort of additional insider information.
Wonderful. Then there is the case of predictive analysis. For example, if an AI tool is uh, following a case over time, how accurate can it be in predicting what the eventual judgment is going to be?
I think actually predictability, I think is one of the strongest points of AI, I feel. But just before that, just to on the point of contract, India is very interesting. Supposing there's a breach of contract and you file a suit. So one of the things that a judge would look into is the intention behind the parties who drafted the contract. Because who drafted the contract? Who had more negotiating power? What was the intent of putting a clause? Now, if the AI drafted a contract, then whose intention will actually come forth? And that's very interesting because the judge will never be able to go behind the mind of an AI. But it also has that both parties have equal negotiating power because none of them have actually done anything. It's a third party. You can't make a AI up. I mean, you then probably find suits where the AI will become a party. It's very interesting, actually.
Yeah, it's very true. In the U.S. as well, it is the validity of the contract is, was that a fair contract to begin with? It's not just the letter of the law, but it's the spirit of the law, which I'm so glad to hear it's coming in India as well. That if two parties enter into a contract which was one-sided to begin with, it's thrown out. I mean, it's the same kind of idea that is used in, for example, prenuptial contracts. If prenuptial contracts are one-sided, in fact, all prenuptial contracts in the US after 10 years are null and void. They just throw them out and say, you know what? It's a vertical split because you have been married for long enough.
In India, they don't even exist.
They don't even exist. Yeah.
And any regulatory challenges to the application of technology?
So, since no one has really expected AI to come, at least for the next 5 years, no one's really said any mechanism. But I do feel that there will be probably a body that's going to be set up that's going to regulate AI.
Yeah. But I think this is where I think it's a general question. But technology is moving at such a rapid pace that the best thing is not to over-regulate it, because it's by the time you pass regulation based on old news, technology has already moved forward. I mean, I'm seeing this in the field of AI. I'm using certain tools. Every week, the tool gets better or some other tool comes out that makes the old tool obsolete. That is how quickly this field is moving. And like you rightly said, people who are relying on mundane, repetitive kind of work, like doing research, reading documents, finding clauses, should be worried, because this will replace mundane, repetitive work. And in all fields, not just in the legal field, in the field of manufacturing, in the field of accounting, checking, anything which is where the answer is already known, AI will be able to predict much better than a human being.
Sabeer, you have seen the Indian legal system and you have seen the American legal system, both, by the virtue of having been citizens of both the countries. That's the reason why. Now, there are countries which have very elaborate, very in place, very efficient legal systems. And there are countries which have very highly pressured legal systems. So where would the application of technology work better? Would it work better in facilitating the dispensation of justice in a country like India or in a country like US where things are already very orderly?
I think it would work really well, assuming, I'm just thinking out of the box now, this is just my view. Let's say there are 40 million or 400 million cases pending. And let's assume, hypothetically, that you give an AI engine the tools to make humane decisions based on the data. And you try this in, say, 1,000 cases and say, let's have AI make a judgment in 1,000 cases. All of a sudden, the workload of 400 million can be done in days. Assuming people buy into the argument that people are presenting the truth. You know, the underlying thing is truth always wins. If we can somehow create a system where, hypothetically speaking, we say lying is a crime, and it's a bigger crime, it carries more penalty than the actual crime that you have committed. If somehow we can bring that into a system and then use AI to adjudicate it, all 400 million cases will be solved in a week. So that is the opportunity that exists with using technology to make human life better for all and equitable for all.
Well, that's actually a very interesting point, and that's I think where US and India differ a lot, because US perjury is a big thing. Like, people are scared of India. No one prosecutes for perjury. You have the section in place, but people perjure themselves all the time. There's hardly any jail time, if at all. People don't get prosecuted for it. So people are willing to lie on the stand, which in US no one ever does, because it's very you probably, I think, get the same punishment as the underlying crime itself in US.
Bigger. Perjury, penalty of perjury is up to 20 years.
Because it vitiates the essence.
That's it. Because it's based on a system that says truth always wins. And even if you take truth to your grave, you'll have to come back in the next life to pay for your sins. So in a way, even though it's such an advanced society, it actually believes in the original Indian theory of karma more than India itself does.
Raghav, any other aspect of law or legal work where you feel that technology, not necessarily AI, but technology per se, can be greatly supportive?
So I actually think it's a very interesting topic, because I think law is a unique field in so much as any other industry, because when you look at how AI will affect it, so the top brass won't be affected at all, which is people who argue like me. The middle bracket gets wiped off, which is people who research and draft. But the lowest bracket is untouched as well, because the clerks can't be replaced, because clerks have to physically go and get the affidavit notarized, they have to physically get the stamp paper. So that AI can never do. So it will be a unique sort of space where the lowest are not prejudiced and the highest are not prejudiced, but the entire middle bracket gets wiped out.
Sabeer, what's going to happen to these people, the middle bracket?
No. And then the other side is, all of a sudden, let's assume people who do not have access to legal resources start using technology to make contracts with each other. It suddenly opens up, gives them an avenue of creating a contract on their own and settling small issues on their own without having to rely on a legal system to determine a transaction between two parties. So that's where there is a positive use case of AI, or technology in general, that it opens the legal system to a billion people. Assuming, hey, I trust you, you trust me, but if I'm renting a home from you, or if I'm selling you this, we sign a simple contract between us that this is what it is. Let's use AI to generate that contract.
So the classic picture of a lawyer's office, or a legal office, would be the walls full of books, annals, libraries, and then you have to consult. You need to get to one of the books, open them, take the case history, go through it. Now you just have to go to the computer, and at maybe 2 or 3 maximum clicks of the button, everything is in front of you on the screen.
But we'll still keep the books for sure.
Yeah.
We still do, actually, but I don't think any of us will read those books. We're still researching one.
They're talking about
for professional aesthetics.
Exactly, that's what they're all.
But let me also tell you how in Silicon Valley, the startup ecosystem is relying on a legal document, called the Safe Note. Safe Note is actually just a note for taking investments from friends and family before a legally binding round. And Safe Note is open. The Safe Note was created by a firm called an investment firm called Y Combinator. Sam Altman, who is now the CEO of OpenAI and ChatGPT, was at Y Combinator. So all across Silicon Valley, when people have ideas, they take investments from their friends and family, small amounts, before they do the full round, totally on trust, on nothing but a safe note, which is not even reviewed by a lawyer. It's done just between two parties. Now, that is a classic use of technology, where they use documents and actual notes to transact between two parties, without involving the legal infrastructure to facilitate that transaction. I mean, classic use of technology. And the safe note originally was created by one, perhaps, law firm for Y Combinator, but Y Combinator says, you know what, all startups should use this. And they just put the safe note on the web, and now every startup in the valley uses a safe note to get investment from friends and family prior to a proper VC round.
Actually, one thing that no other jurisdiction has thought of till now, because they stop at decision making. One thing which I feel that AI can really do well is actually mediating. Because then you don't make a decision. The decision is not binding on the parties. But what AI can do, which a human can never do, is it can give you 50 different possibilities and outcomes, which you can predict for the parties. And then the parties can decide whether they want to litigate at all. And I think the mediation rates are going to skyrocket.
Yes.
And the government actually is now introducing a mediation bill for the first time, where if it passes both the houses, then it will be mandatory to go to mediation before you go to court. So if they integrate AI into that, and in AI we do the mediation, where it just gives you the 50 possible outcomes and the timelines and the money, then people can take a commercial call as to where they want to litigate.
Yeah.
Wonderful. That's a very useful area, I'm sure. Raghav Kakkar, you are a bright young lawyer who comes from a family of very eminent doctors. And, this whole variety of thought always helps in one's imagination and, connecting the various threads professionally. Is there any other area that you see which is impacted by technology?
I actually think that it's gone so much better. And I really hope that, unfortunately, we've not seen any investments. We've not seen any money being pumped into AI in law. But I think when that starts, like in any other field, when that starts coming in, I think the field's going to change for the better. I say it from a point of privilege, of course, it's going to make my life easier. But I still feel anything that increases access to justice or makes it a more level playing field, I always feel it should. And I think what we need now, which we don't have at all, is some person who's looking not for profitability, but to actually put in money to make the justice system easier. And I think AI is the best tool for that. But then we need investors who will not care over any return. But I think instead of setting legal aid clinics up, rather invest in technology. And I think AI can just change the entire playing field. It's the best thing to have happened to law, I think, in a very long time.
So, Sabeer, as I see, the practice of law and dispensation of justice will carry on for all times in civil societies. Till as long as a society is civil, there will be a requirement to dispense justice. And technology will keep developing, taking leaps ahead in the future. The idea is congruence between technology and the process of law. And I think this is a great area. We can always follow this area very studiously in times to come. Thank you very much for being here with us, Raghav. Sabeer, for your very valuable inputs. Despite the fact that you're not a lawyer, your inputs are very invaluable. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Sabeer.
And maybe he'll start a law startup soon, AI based.
Why not?
Viewers, you are most welcome to ask questions. Please download the Showreel app from App Store or Play Store. Put your questions there and be assured that they will be answered by B Cubed. Thank you.